First, we need to remove the orange covers, and you do that by opening the cover, and then they kind of just come off like that. And then we're going to measure and mark the polarity. So I'm using a DMM. I've set it to at least 70 volts on the range. And we're going to measure each module from one side to the other. So in this case, I'm measuring 64 volts positive. So this is an 18S plus module. So I'm going to mark with a Sharpie. I'm going to mark the positive side with a plus. And I'm going to mark the negative side with the negative. I'm going to do that to all of the modules. On the next module here, I'm measuring minus 67 volts. So this is a minus module because this is the negative terminal. We can verify that here by flipping around and seeing that, yep, in fact, this is the negative terminal. So I'm going to draw a negative here and a positive on the other side. To my knowledge, all 12S modules are 12S positive, and this one is as well. So what we have here then is an 18S positive, an 18S minus, and a 12S positive, which is a supported configuration. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this plastic cover on the 18S modules only. We need to make these cables more flexible to install them in the car. And to do that, we're going to remove the orange electric tape and the cover. To do that, you need to cut this electric tape off. However, the loose end of the tape is inside of here. So you are going to need to actually cut or tear the tape here. Be careful not to nick the wire harness. Next, we're going to take the orange cover off, and you do that by lifting up on this tab, and then the cover is just going to come off. And then we're going to take the electric tape off here as well, and we're going to actually pull this covering off. And remove all of the orange electric tape down to the wire. And we're going to keep that cover on. And then we'll go ahead and reattach the orange connector. That makes this cable quite a bit more flexible. So we'll do the same to the other 18S module here. And again, you don't need to do it to the 12S module. Next, we're going to attach the studs to the 12S module, and they attach to the threaded bolts on the opposite side of the BMS connector. Tighten these all the way. They need to be fairly tight. And now we're going to add temperature sensors, and the temperature sensor will go on the centralmost 7mm bolt on the battery terminals. So loosen this bolt. Here are the 3 temperature sensors. We're going to put 1 temperature sensor on each battery. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall these bolts. As we're tightening these bolts, we need to make sure the eyelet stays relatively straight here. So I'm using just a screwdriver just to make sure it doesn't twist too much. You can optionally reattach these orange covers. I don't personally use them. I don't think that they're necessary. So finally, we're going to attach the Bms adapters. You need to be very careful with these connectors. This is not a consumer-friendly connector. It's made to be plugged in one time. The first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that all of these pins are straight. They were straight when they left. I checked them all. But you need to make sure they haven't gotten bent somehow. If they get bent and you force them to fit, you're going to create a short and it's going to possibly catch on fire. So for that reason, when you're plugging in these adapters, you should either do this outside or you should do it somewhere where if it catches on fire, you're okay. So to plug the connector in, we're going to find the side that has a latch on it. And this is the mating latching mechanism right here. You can see it right there. And we're going to take and plug this connector exactly straight into the battery. Next, we'll connect the 18S BMS adapter cables. And these have a small groove here on one side, and that mates with the locking tab. Again, you want to make sure there's no bent pins, and then you want to plug this connector in very straight and push it on like that. Now on the 18S minus and 18S plus configuration, we'll leave these shields installed. If you have 2 18S minus, then you'll take one of these off, like that. But on the 18S minus and 18S plus, you'll leave them both in place. Before we install the 12S module inside the battery enclosure, we need to attach the two 48S leads. They have 48S all written on the middle, and then the Bay1 positive should go to the relay. Do make sure you verify these. If you connect these cables incorrectly, you could actually cause a direct short circuit that could be unfused. So be careful when you're connecting these cables. We need to hook the Bay1 positive onto the positive side. Earlier we of course wrote the positive nature there, and we're going to attach the cable with the bent side facing down. Do make sure that this cable stays perpendicular to that face as you're tightening it. And then we're going to take another cable, which is again a 48S all cable, and it goes from Bay1 minus to the switch. So the Bay1 minus, we're going to connect like that. Again, make sure you're on the negative side, which we wrote earlier. With both cables installed on module 1, we're going to take and make the high current cables down. That will always be that way on all the modules, no matter how you install them. The high current cables will always be below the battery management cable. So with that, we're going to slide into the enclosure. Now, the battery enclosure is tapered because it's injection molded, which means that the hole on this side is narrower than the hole on this side. And so we have this position to where the junction board will install here. You can see these three holes are only present on this side. If you look at the other side, there are not three holes. So back over here, these are the three holes the junction board mounts to, and this is Bay 1. So we're going to install the Bay 1 module from the right to the left, and we're going to do this by taking the cables and just sliding them in. And see how this cable came through here? You're going to have to go in as soon as you get the battery in there, and you're going to need to make sure all the cables are not getting stuck, particularly that temperature sensor cable. And don't pull, I'm not pulling with the left hand, I'm pushing out of frame with my right hand to make this bay go in properly. So we're going to find the cable that is labeled 18S minus and 18S plus, or quantity to 18S minus. This is the same cable for both of those configurations, and this should say fuse on one side, and then on the other one it should say Bay 2 positive. So we're going to take this cable, and we're going to take a 12mm socket, and we're going to loosen the fuse bolt here, and then we're going to take and slide this cable through here, and then we're going to go ahead and attach this bolt. And then you might as well tighten this bolt too, just in case it's loose. And now we're going to take the junction board, and we're going to slide our enclosure back in, and we're going to take this wire through here, and we're going to stick it through the bottom rightmost hole. Like that. Pull our two HVDC power cables up, and we're going to set the junction board on top of these two posts right here. Like that. Make sure that this cable here, because it goes through at an angle, make sure it's pulled out enough. You should have plenty of room here to attach this to the battery that will eventually go in Bay 2. Next, we're going to reinstall the 6 bolts that hold this junction board on. And we'll go ahead and tighten these bolts. Now we're going to take the switch cable here, it says switch on it, and we're going to slide it through this hole, which goes straight through. And keep in mind at this point, nothing here is high voltage. That 12S module is not high enough voltage. So we're going to go ahead and attach this switch cable. We're going to route it between here. And then this cable here for the DC-DC converter, you might route through there. But you do want it to be a clean route, however you end up doing it. So that works. And then we're going to take our number 3 Phillips screw here and a number 3 Phillips screwdriver. And we're going to attach this eyelet. we're going to install these covers. And so we can first install this guy, like that. And go ahead and snap these back on. And then we'll install our fuse cover as well. And the reason we install these now is to make sure you don't accidentally touch any of the switched off bus bars. Next, we're going to take the Bay1 positive cable and we're going to route it through this hole. And as we come through the hole, we need to turn and route it through the battery current sensor. And then we'll go ahead and pull up as we continue to route. Now we're going to take the screw that goes in the contactor here and a number 2 Phillips, and we're going to mount, there's 4 wires that need to connect. On the bottom is the cable we just routed, and then the remaining cables connect on top of that in whatever order you'd like. So I'm going to put these 2 cables, and then I'm going to grab the LiBCM positive and then that guy and line them all up. And you can add a slight bend to this connector if it makes sense. And then we'll go ahead and tighten that all the way. This is not oriented correctly, so what we need to do is loosen this Phillips and rotate that 90 degrees to there. To minimize the amount of leakage, we need to reinstall the plug right here because there's no wire through it. The other 3 holes, of course, have wires going through them, so air will leak out of them, but that's okay.